Okay. Hello, everyone. Good evening to all of you. I hope I'm audible to all of you clearly. Okay. So, welcome to the GATE AR 2024 exam preparation strategy. I'm sure most of you are still preparing for the exam, which is going to be held on the 3rd of February 2024. Now, before digressing into how should you prepare, what should you focus on, preparation strategy, I'm sure you let us quickly go through the exam pattern and try and understand what is the exam about, or rather what kind of questions are going to be asked. So I'm sure there are a few of you who have attempted the exam before, but we will quickly go through the exam pattern for the people who are attempting this for the first time. So as far as the exam pattern and details are concerned, we will look at what is the paper about, what are the number of marks and all of those details, right? So if you see, the total exam is of 100 marks, where you have your aptitude section, your school level mathematics, reasoning, etc. for 15 marks, and you have 85 marks related to core architecture and planning, right? Now, the typology of questions, or what kind of questions are basically asked, is, if you see, the total paper is divided into 4 typology of questions. First, let's put it or call it as recall questions, where you are basically tested on your memory, where you are expected to know some facts and figures or formulas, let's say, and give the correct answer. Now, in these kind of questions, your recall questions, there is no conceptual clarity or basics that would really help. It's pure facts. Now, if you look at this question on the screen, that who is known as Gandhi of architecture? So we all know the answer, that is Laurie Baker. Now, in this case, there is no concept, no base, but it's a pure factual question, right? So a few questions are going to be factual based. A few others are going to be comprehension based. So in a comprehension based question, you are expected to know the basics related to that particular topic or subject, your basic understanding, conceptual clarity. Now, for example, if you look at the question on screen, the Type A 101 building is where the steel sphere is used for what purpose? To reduce horizontal sway, but that horizontal sway is caused because of what? Which of the following options? So now, for a high-rise building, horizontal sway, if I may say so, one important factor has to be the wind load, right? So in this case, your conceptual clarity, basic understanding is going to be put to test. Then coming to application based questions, where you are expected to apply your knowledge, your what you are using day to day in your day to day practice. For example, if you look at the question on screen, in AutoCAD, the maximum number of points for OSNAP in circle, OSNAP command using circle, how many points are you going to get at the max? So this, we all use AutoCAD, even if you are still an undergraduate student, maybe in your 3rd year, 4th year, or 5th year, or you have just graduated or finished graduation 2 years ago. We all use AutoCAD, right? So this kind of a question is very application based, what we use on day-to-day basis. And the other category of questions is what your analysis and synthesis based questions. So here you will be given with some data, some facts and figures, and what is expected out of you is to use that particular data and derive an answer. So for example, here in this question, there is some data that is given with respect to a simply supported beam of 8 meters span and a UDL of 20 kilonewton per meter, and you have to find out the maximum bending moment. So some sort of data is given. You have to use your knowledge, your analysis, analytical skills, and come to some answer in this case. So usually your NAT types or numerical type questions would be or can be put into this category, if I may say so. And if we look at the type or the pattern of questions, you have a few MCQ questions where you are expected to give one correct answer. So if you look at the question on screen, which institute is organizing GATE 2024? So for this question, there is going to be only one correct answer that would be there. There cannot be more than one correct answer for a multiple choice question. Whereas recently, when the GATE pattern was changed 2 years ago, they have introduced MSQ questions, multiple select questions as well, where there is one or more than one correct answer for a particular question. Now, take the example of this question on screen, where which of the following is or are states in India? So Maharashtra, yes, is a state. Gujarat is a state. Mumbai is not a state. Goa is a state, right? So in this case, here you have more than one correct answer. Now, for example, suppose if I mark, let's say that I mark only Maharashtra and Gujarat as my correct answers, for example. Now here I am partially correct, but not completely correct. So in this case, I will not get any marks. When will I get the full allotted marks? Maybe 1 mark or 2 mark, whatever. Let's assume this is a 2 mark question. Okay. So when will I get the full 2 marks is only when I give all three as the correct answers. Also, in case, let's say here, suppose I mark Mumbai as well as one of the correct answers. So here I mark Maharashtra, Gujarat, and Mumbai, where we know it is a wrong answer. So even in that case, there is no negative marking. So for your MSQ questions, there will be no negative marking. And the same goes for your numerical questions or NAT questions, where you are given with some data. And here in a numerical question, you have to derive the answer directly. There will be no options given. And in that case also, for your numerical questions, there is no negative marking. So negative marking is only going to be for your MCQ type of questions. So that gives us a better free way to attempt all MSQ as well as NAT questions without the fear of losing any marks. Okay. And as far as the detailed marking scheme is concerned, for aptitude, we have 10 questions of 15 marks, where you have 5 questions of 1 mark each and other 5 questions of 2 marks each, adding up to 15. As far as architecture and planning part is concerned, here we can divide it into two, that is section A and section B. Now this change has happened in the past 2 years, where we have section A as the common section, where you have to attempt all the questions, or this rather compulsory section. And you have another section, that is section B, where you have to choose between either B1, that is architecture, or B2, that is planning part. Now again, in this case, you have a leeway to look at all the questions from B1 as well as B2 and then make a choice as to which question or which section do you want to attempt. Secondly, we get this question a lot of times that if I want to pursue my master's in planning, do I have to opt for section B2? No, you do not have to do that. You can also give section or attempt section B1 of architecture, get a good score, and still get admitted into a planning course for masters. So there is no compulsion of any sort that you have to give only one section for one stream or anything of that sort. Now, as far as the marking for this is concerned, you have 60 marks for the entire common section, that is section A, 18 questions of 1 mark each, and 21 questions of 2 marks. And for section B, it consists of 25 marks in total. So you choose either architecture or planning, where you have 7 questions of 1 mark each and 9 questions of 2 marks each. So 7 and 18 adding to your 25. I hope this is clear to all of you, or those who are attempting it for the first time have a better idea as to what the exam is or how does it look like. Secondly, as far as your MCQs are concerned, like I said, that MCQs will have negative marking. So in that case, every 1 mark MCQ, if you give a wrong answer, there is 1/3 negative marking. So for every wrong answer, for a 1 mark question, 0.33 marks will be reduced. And for a 2 mark MCQ question, 2/3 negative marking will be there. So 0.63 marks will be reduced. Sorry, 0.66. I hope this is clear to all of you. And as far as the syllabus is concerned, we will just quickly go through the main topics. Where for aptitude, as it's mentioned, you need to focus on your verbal, quantitative aptitude, analytical, and spatial aptitude. So quantitative aptitude is going to include your numericals like time, distance, speed, sort of numericals that we have studied at school level. Verbal aptitude is related to your English language. Analytical and spatial is going to include your reasoning, logical reasoning, analytical reasoning. Okay. And then coming to the common section, that is section A, where you have all topics related to architecture, planning, design, construction management, environmental planning and design, urban design, landscape conservation, planning process, housing, and services and infrastructure. Now, if you look at this overall, it's a mix of your architecture and planning subjects. So it would be a better idea or a smarter move to not choose any topic from B1 or B2 at this moment, but rather prepare or have a wholesome preparation. Why? Because in common section, you have questions which are there from planning, which are there from architecture as well. So that will give you a much better hand at scoring these 60 marks. So don't go with the mindset that, okay, I'm only going to attempt part B1 and I will leave out, let's say, planning part. That will not help you increase your score. Okay. For architecture part, that is part B1, we have history and contemporary architecture, we have building construction and building structures. Along with that, you have building services and sustainability. So your topics related to climatology, right? Passive design and passive cooling techniques, all of those come under this part. And as far as section B2 is concerned, you have regional and settlement planning, planning techniques and management. So all questions related to GIS, other planning techniques, what is land pooling, what is land acquisition, all of these different techniques related to planning, land management, all of those would come under this part. And for infrastructure planning, under planning, here the major focus is on your transportation planning. Now we have a rough idea as to what all is asked. Of course, I would ask you guys that once this webinar is done, go back, open the detailed syllabus and go through that syllabus at least 2-3 times. So you have a much clearer idea. Now, if we see today is 31st of December, we have the exam on 3rd of Feb. So we have roughly 30-32 days in hand. Now, what should be the focus? What should be the strategy? as far as the preparation strategy is concerned, considering this less amount of time that we have in hand, the smartest thing to do would be go back and analyze all your previous year question papers. Okay. Now, with respect to the question papers also, we will be discussing the previous paper analysis from 2007 to 2023 and try and formulate our own strategies with respect to that. Now, if you look at the cumulative study of all the subjects put together here on the screen from 2007 to 23, roughly 15-16 years, your major questions are asked from all the fields or all the subjects: architecture, design, history, structures, building materials, environment, urban planning, planning techniques, services and transportation, right? So there is no one particular subject that GATE focuses on, but it is a well-balanced system or well balanced questions from all subjects and all topics. So that tells us that we cannot ignore any subject, but to have a little more detailed idea, considering the less number of days, what we can do is have a little more detailed analysis of what is usually asked in which topic or in which subject. Now, considering architecture design, if you look at it, majority of the questions, 42% till date from 2007 to 23, that is total number of 62 questions till date in the past 15 years, have been asked on architects and their works. So questions like who has built this so-and-so building, or who is the architect of so-and-so building, or which of the followings were built by this architect, and you will be given 4 options, or books and authors, or which movie is related to which architect. All kinds of works related to the particular architect is the most important focus in architecture and design. Of course, along with your computers, softwares, your questions related to GIS or BIM, AutoCAD, right? Architecture, graphics and basics of design, very, very important. Your design principles, what is rhythm, all those principles that we study, right? Your color theory, very, very important parts with respect to the preparation. And then, of course, you have other questions like related to buildings and their details. You have questions from universal design, basic standards, likewise. So here the priority focus would be, I would say, at least these 4 parts that you need to know really, really well. And as students of architecture, we have been practicing this in all 5 years. We go through this, we look at it on a daily basis. So I would say it's not a very difficult thing, but you need to brush up your knowledge with respect to this data. Moving on to the next subject, if I look at history of architecture, maximum questions, 47% questions are asked from Western architecture, where there are questions on Renaissance, Baroque architecture, your Gothic architecture, French, all of these, your Greek, Roman, Egyptian, all come under your Western architecture. And then you have the Indian architecture, Indian subcontinent architecture, where there are questions related to all the temple architecture in India. You have Islamic architecture, that is primarily another focus of questions, right? So these are your main priority areas. Then, of course, you have few 1 or 2 questions from prehistoric era, where we are talking about maybe Bhimbetka caves or ancient civilizations, or even beyond that, your Bronze Age, Copper Age, and all of those, and modern architecture as well. Fine. Coming to building structures, your major focus in the topic for the past years has been on questions related to shear force and bending moment, stress and strain, majorly shear force, right? And after that you have strength, basics of the SOM, strength of materials, what are stress, strain. Other than that, one important thing that has always been asked in the recent past 2-3 years is your IS standards, Indian standards related to RCC. So from 2022, we have been seeing these questions. 23 paper also saw questions related to RCC Indian standards. So that is another important topic that should be focused on. Coming to building construction, project management, estimation, evaluation, if I may say, in building construction, most or maximum number of topics are on your building materials, right? So discussing about or questions related to maybe bricks, wood, timber, glass, its properties, its what are the defects in timber, or what is efflorescence, for example, in related to bricks, right? These properties of your materials, rather characteristics, main important points, all of those are focused on with respect to when there are questions related to building materials. Then you have few questions on building components as well. Like you have questions related to what is a transom, what is a mullion. So basically, again, talking about a window, which is a component of a building. Few questions related to staircase, asking about what is a winder step, right? So those are a few parts with respect to building construction. And in estimation and valuation, majority of questions come from your estimation part, right? So roughly around 33 questions in the past few years on estimation and 23 on valuation. So again, that is a very, very important part as well of your preparation. And then you have project management, right? Where you have questions and numericals related to your CPM, PERT, etc. As well as for another point for building construction, you have a few questions on construction techniques, where there are questions related to, let's say, toothing. What is toothing in brickwork, right? Or toothing is related to what? So in the options, your correct answer would be brickwork, right? So that is again a construction technique, but here major focus is on materials. Moving on to your environment and sustainability part. Here again, under sustainability, it's your climate that or climatology that you need to know. What is passive cooling techniques, um, solar chart, azimuth angle, all of those kind of questions come under this. So within environment and climatology, more focus is or has been on climatology, and then of course environment is not ignored. So basic questions like what is a niche, what is a biome, ecotone, related questions come from your ecology and environment part. And in the recent few years, building rating systems, right? Your LEED rating, IGBC, all of those have been asked a lot more frequently, at least one question per year. Fine. Then coming to planning techniques. So in planning techniques, again, you have a lot of questions based on the policies and the acts or government schemes, where a particular government scheme is given, or which of the following is a part of this so and so scheme, and four options are given. Other than that, you have questions related to planning survey, GIS and remote sensing, important part in planning techniques. Then a few questions related to population study are also important, and few questions from URDPFI guidelines are asked usually with respect to if for so and so population what, or if there is a primary healthcare center, in one area, how much should the population be, right? So for how much population will I open or start a primary healthcare center in a particular area? So these kind of questions or questions related to hill towns, hill slopes are asked usually from the URDPFI guidelines. Services and infrastructure, transportation. Again, in transportation, you have questions more which are very basic. But again, since the past trend has changed a bit, there we see that a few more questions have been asked in detail in the past 2 years. Details related to surveys, um, related to what is your trip, definitions, basic definitions like what is a trip, etc., different types of surveys and all of that. And if you come to the core services, major questions are asked from your water supply and sanitation. Now, if you go and analyze your previous year papers, you will see a lot of questions have been asked from plumbing and the pipes, which trap is what, gully trap or bottle trap, etc., kind of questions. Along with water supply sanitation, important part is your acoustics and especially the numericals related to acoustics, right? Of course, you have numericals from water supply and sanitation also, but here we see a trend of more of theory that is being asked along with few numericals, whereas for acoustics, I may say so, you have more numericals that have been asked in the recent past. Other than that, you have few questions on power supply, lifts and escalators, your HVAC, waste management, etc. Okay, and in the past two papers, we have been seeing questions also related to building services and security systems. Then coming to housing, major portion of your housing is consumed by numericals. Now, numericals in case of housing are usually related to your FSI, FAR, your population study. Rather than population study, I would call it population with respect to housing shortage. You have questions related to housing demand and housing needs. And another category of questions that are related to gross and net density. Right? So these are usually the four categories of questions that the numericals are usually based on in terms of housing. Other than that, again, you have basic terms, basic concepts that are asked, questions related to housing finance, what is National Housing Bank, who owns National Housing Bank, or questions related to private housing finance institutions in India. And in the past 2 years, we have seen a rising trend with respect to policies and acts. So the one of the most favorite, I would say, is your PMAY, which is also your current important scheme, ongoing scheme. So we have seen questions on PMAY, that is Pradhan Mantri Awas Yojana, in the past two papers in detail. Right. So that is an important scheme that I would say you should focus on. And then coming to urban and regional planning, here, if I may say so, majority of your questions are asked on planning history, planning principles, right? Where you are asked about the Vedic planning system, right? I'm sure you must have heard of these Dandaka, Sarvatobhadra, which were the Vedic principles of town planning. Other than that, basic other principles. Along with that, you have questions related to basic concepts, basic theories, and planning models. So, all the concentric zone theory, or let's say garden city concept, or new multi-nuclei theory, von Thunen model, all of those kind of questions are majorly focused on in this part. Of course, along with your other basics of urban planning, that is with respect to land management, what is urban planning, and different areas related to urban planning, I would say. Along with that, planning policies, right? And again, in this, even in the basic theories, right from history, there is also a focus on what are the current trends with respect to planning. So some ongoing planning policies would be asked. And here also a few calculations have been asked with respect to the population projections in urban planning. Okay, this is a cumulative study of all the question papers from 2007 till 2023, which is roughly around your 15 years. And if I do that study, right? So in that case, if you see the cutoffs, last year the cutoff went off to 33.7 and the highest marks were 75.67. Now, it is very easy, I would say, just to get or just to pass the exam, but only getting that cutoff or close to cutoff will not help you get admission for your masters in a good institute, let's say like IITs or NITs or even SPA Bhopal or Vijayawada, right? So what we need to focus on is streamlining our preparation and keeping it concise for the next 30-31 days and focusing on how to improve your marks or how can you score maximum number of marks, right? Because and what is going to help you is this previous paper analysis that we have just looked at. So what would be your strategy? Now, to understand that, if I may say so, I will just discuss Parkinson's law with you, which says that the amount of work expands to fill the time available for its completion. So it means that if I give you a task to complete, and if I give you 1 week to complete a task which is actually going to take only 2 hours, then psychologically speaking, the task will increase in complexity psychologically, okay, not in reality, but psychologically, yes, and become more daunting to you, right? It actually, when you go to implement that task, it is not going to need 2 weeks to complete. It may not even fill that extra time with more work. But that stress and tension is what is going to daunt you down. So trust me, the next 30-32 days are enough for you to prepare, cover up, and go through the entire syllabus, because this, whatever the syllabus is not something that is new to you. You have been doing it in your graduation, right? Those who are still in college have done it, right? So what should be the strategy? Definitely not this or this one day before the exam. You cannot do that. So what we can do is have a twofold strategy. Let's call it a macro level strategy and a micro level strategy. Now for macro level, looking at the previous paper analysis, right? I can club architecture, design, history, BCM, project management, planning, services in as my first priority, considering they were given more weightage over the past few years, whereas there have been questions also with respect to your second priority subjects like urban design, landscape, structures, housing, right? So let's put these urban design, structures, housing, conservation as your second priority, considering the data that we have from the analysis. But that, of course, does not mean that you ignore second priority subjects. It just means that you finish off these ones first and then come to these. Because here you have lesser quantity to finish or lesser quantity to study as compared to this. Okay. And the micro level strategy, let's say even if I start from today. Now this is a strategy considering that you are already studying, already preparing, or are a serious candidate with, let's say, respect to even in your college, right? And there is, of course, there is no magic pill. You have to put in those efforts. Now, let's say I start from today itself. I would roughly take 2 days to finish architecture and design. Considering history and the vast portion it has, give another 5 days till this Saturday, 6th of January, to finish off history. Come to urban planning and planning techniques for the next 3 days from 7th to 9th. Give another 4 days for all your building construction, building project management, estimation, valuation. Finish revising your services in another 4 days, because yes, services is a vast subject, right? You have to cover up all kinds of services in that. So take maybe a little more time. Along with services, yes, you have to also focus on transportation. So that also would be a part of it. Environmental planning and design, another three days along with climatology. And then once you are done with your priority 1 subject, come to your priority 2 subjects, structures for 2 days, because again, if you see, it's more numericals that are asked and lesser of theory. So it's more about getting those concepts clear for structures. And if you sit dedicatedly, I think that would be enough. Again, urban design, landscape conservation. If you seriously ask yourself, conservation is a subject you can really finish off in 2 hours. Landscape, important. What is it important to know is your, the kind of questions that are asked are usually based on the botanical names or the history of landscape, the types of landscape gardens, right? So that has to be your first priority when you're preparing landscape subject, right? And same goes for urban design. Basic concepts. What is figure ground? What is your theory of Jane Jacobs? What is the serial vision theory by Gordon Cullen? Basic concepts need to be cleared. Housing, again, I would say, is a subject that you can cover in 1 day, where again the focus has to be on more on numericals and then your policies, right? Now, the rest of the days that are there from 26th to 3rd, right? So let's say this is first, second, and third. 3rd of Feb is where your exam is. From 26th to 3rd, utilize these days for your revision. Okay. Take one subject now, since you've already studied all of these in the past 3 weeks. By 26, 27, it's not that you will be completely blank. You will remember things that you have read in these weeks. So now it's time to revise that. And in case if you feel that, I have left one chapter, let's say from history or one subtopic, maybe give 2 hours on one day and finish it off. That way you will cover up everything. Don't read anything new, don't study anything new after 26th or after 27th, I would say. So from 28th to 2nd, just keep on revising, because if you see, revision is the main key to clear this exam. Okay. And with other things from the exam front, like I said, analyze the previous year papers and practice mock tests, practice numericals and formulas. Very, very important. Personal front, please don't be bothered about what your friend is doing or how much have they finished studying. And secondly, identify your weaknesses and start working upon them. Now, for example, let's say even in this timetable that we have discussed here, right? For example, let's say I I am very good at history, I know that, right? Probably then instead of 5 days, I might just finish off history in 2 days. And maybe let's say I know I'm weak in services, right? So these 3 days I can put to use for services then. That is something I can do, right? So this is something where you have to play on your strengths and weaknesses. So know what you are good at, know yourself better. That will help you much more, right? Yes. And to help the students, we are coming up with a 21 days crash course, which will be from 1st, that is tomorrow, till 21st of January, where you will have classes, 2 classes per day from 7 to 8:30 and 8:30 to 10 p.m., considering that most of you are either in college or are working students, right? The classes will be conducted by top rankers who are AIR 2, 4, 5. And again, the focus is more on only what the syllabus demands from you, what you really need to focus on, rather than looking at the whole thing, considering the time, of course. Along with that, various tips and tricks or strategies to solve different types of questions will also be discussed in the class. And the price for that is not 12,000. It is 6,799. But also we have another giveaway today, since it's New Year's Eve, where I will come to it towards the end. Now, again, here you will also be getting the 2023 question paper solved one with detailed explanation and 2 full-length mock tests based on the new pattern, where you can see your section of architecture, section B1 or B2 as well, along with your analysis as to where have you gone wrong, how much time have you taken for which question, similar to what is the actual uh, picture at the GATE exam, right? So hopefully we will achieve something from this to this by the end of 21 days, where you will get a much more clearer picture as to what to focus on and how to streamline your preparation. And like I said about the giveaway, for the first 20 minutes, we have an offer for the first 20 minutes only, where you get the course at 6599. The details are shared in the chat along with the coupon code. So those who wish to enroll may please do so. So thank you, and wish you all the best. In case of any queries, you can message us on WhatsApp. The number is being shared in the chat. So wish you all the best. We are here to help the students, and thank you.